Yes, we're live. So I'll give everyone the link actually for YouTube if you want to. It's not hasn't done it yet. Do it in a minute. But I have to make sure it doesn't start.
Yes, we're live.
Yes. If it's playing on my machine at the same time as on Zoom, you just hear the echo of a second later. So I won't do that. All right. So welcome everybody to this webinar, which has been hosted by the Australian chapter or Australasia chapter, which is really just starting. So we're going to put some information in the link below to give you more information on that. So please do get involved. There's two people, two co-leads. We have Ali Dori, who is not here today, so I'm kind of like his proxy. I'm the VP for Hyperledger, part of Linux Foundation here in Asia Pacific, and I'm based in Hong Kong. And we have and we also have Levine, who is the other co-lead, who's going to do a talk today. As it's a Linux Foundation webinar or meeting, I have to have two housekeeping items. One is that we do have an antitrust policy, which you can look at on our website, just no collusion, right? And the second thing is we have a code of conduct, which is pretty straightforward. Just please respect each other, and it's quite common sense. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Levine Naidoo, who works at IBM. I think it's IBM Sterling. He has a long career, and he's going to talk a little bit about that in supply chain, and particularly around blockchain and supply chain. And he's now going to give us a talk, I think for about 30-40 minutes. If people could put their questions in the chat as you go along, we can make it a little bit interactive. And welcome everybody. And Levine, I'm now going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Julian. I'm just going to pause my video so that there's a bit of screen real estate. Well, thank you for that, Julian. And I trust you can see my screen. Can you just let me know?
We can see your screen.
Great. So thank you again. And I'd like to thank everyone for sharing their time with us today. Just to give you a heads up, it would be good if you can all have your mobile phones handy, because what I'll attempt to do is give you an opportunity to experience food trust or traceability firsthand. So to get the ball rolling, you'll find my QR code on the screen. Please feel free to connect with me, and I'd be happy to talk offline or share more details should you wish. So just to set expectations today, I will not be covering Hyperledger by any stretch of the imagination, but really, I feel it's important to share experience and knowledge around what it truly enables. That is, in today's business environment, collaboration based on a shared or common ledger is becoming increasingly vital, especially in the last 2 years when you're seeing so much is needed to address friction and issues and disruptions in the supply chain, which is calling for more advanced collaboration amongst trading partners. And Hyperledger is an excellent foundation for collaborative business and provides a lot of the plumbing needed to build collaborative solutions. And in my view, you will see an increasing occurrence of hybrid Hyperledger-based solutions to improve business collaboration. So today I'll cover a little background on IBM. Next, we'll go over some stats that indicate priorities for supply chains and how it has changed today. We'll look at what are the key conversation points in these change priorities, and we'll cover why a fresh approach is needed. So all this is necessary for you to draw a linkage as to why Hyperledger. And so we'll touch on a solution that strongly aligns with this approach, and namely IBM Food Trust, and the value it brings to participants. And then last but not least, the main reason why you're all here is to look at some of the case studies, and we'll look at Q&A. So before we actually dive into it, I'd just like to make a disclaimer statement that all customers that I mention in today's presentation and all relevant details in this presentation today is sourced from publicly available material. Therefore, at the time of watching, some details may have changed. So just keep that in mind. Although the topic is IBM Food Trust, Food Trust is a marketing brand of IBM Transparent Supply Solution, which covers every kind of supply chain, not just food. And Transparent Supply is an application within our supply chain intelligence suite. So with all that in mind, let's get stuck in. So who is IBM? I'm sure everybody's heard of the brand IBM and what it does. In addition to IBM being the original code contributor and continues to be a major maintainer of Hyperledger Fabric, last year, IBM open sourced additional Hyperledger Fabric code to increase the adoption or the strength of adoption of enterprise strength blockchain. Furthermore, you may have seen that IBM earlier this year has been ranked as number 5 in top 100 and innovative supply chain companies. We're not just a technology company, but a very large supply chain that operates over 175 countries. The key differentiator, and this is an important one, is that the top 4 are all consumer companies, as in Amazon, Apple, PepsiCo, and Nestle. And IBM is not a consumer or CPG company. So how did we get to number 5? Over 10 years ago, we began a supply chain transformation. The story is fully available online. If you'd like a link to it, just let me know. And so we began this transformation after facing significant disruptions. By 2019, we had received quite a few awards for the innovative use of artificial intelligence and blockchain in our own supply chain and became a cognitive supply chain, reducing our disruption response time by about 90%. In the supply chain world, the days of solely focusing on optimization for lowering the cost to serve seems to have gone, making way to a new set of priorities. So let's take a look at what are those new priorities. So as you're fully aware that COVID, environmental, and social disruptions have really highlighted the importance of supply chain, it has shone the spotlight or amplified issues in supply chain that have always been there, but it's just emphasized it. As I said, pre-COVID, there was a focus on taking costs out, but now the agenda has completely changed. There is more than sufficient evidence to point that resilience, agility, and sustainability is the new agenda. So if you look at the 2 sets of stats on the left of my screen, the Economist Intelligent Unit surveyed 400 senior supply chain and procurement executives. And their research found that disruptions have incurred substantial financial costs, around 6 to 10% of annual revenues, as well as reputational costs in terms of customer complaints and damage to the brand. In fact, 60% of the respondents agree that redundancy and resilience in their company's supply chain are more important than speed and efficiency. And then if we look at McKinsey's insight on the right on buying into the sustainable value chain, they suggest that 2/3 of an average company's environment, social, and governance footprint, aka ESG, lies with their suppliers, and ESG performers enjoy faster growth and higher valuations than other players in sectors by a margin of 10 to 20%. And strong ESG credentials drive down costs by 5 to 10%, as these companies focus on operational efficiency and waste reduction. Research insights from the IBM Institute of Business Value indicate that 50% of consumers say they're willing to pay a premium for sustainable brands. And 62% of consumers say they're willing to change their purchasing habits to reduce environmental impact. So, who's driving the sustainability agenda? So consumers are driving the agenda, brands are reevaluating their purpose. Investors are now focusing or using sustainability more specifically in terms of using ESG directives to determine whether an organization is a good investment as well. Regulatory pressure for traceability, anti-slave trade, provenance, issues like ensuring efficient product recall is also on the increase. Australia is one of those countries where there's really a lot of pressure to implement traceability in the supply chain. So there's 2 sides to the sustainability coin, right? There's performance and compliance then. So how does, let's take a deeper look at how those priorities actually impact people's business operations, and what are the key conversation points around that. So firstly, we have resilience and agility is improved by increasing digitization to reduce business friction, which can reduce document exchange times, it can reduce errors, disputes, and reconciliations, can improve visibility of inventory across the entire value chain. I tend to prefer using the term supply chain, value chain, because supply chain often, in the supply chain world, people operating in the trucks and sheds environment tend to use that term supply chain as meaning trucks and sheds. But if you look at value chain, it's completely upstream and downstream from an organization. That means your suppliers, and your customers kind of thing. And lastly, to help reduce fraud and finally improve brand trust. In terms of meeting sustainability drivers, if you look at some of the conversation points there, there's an underlying theme, right? There's still significant wastage in supply chains. If you look at the fresh produce supply chain, and you can tabulate what that means for the country that you're living in, approximately 30% of fresh produce supply chains gets wasted, right? Due to inefficiencies in the supply chain. There's new environmental pressures, so there's a need to cut carbon emissions. There's a need to maintain compliance, internal governance, and compliance from an external regulatory standpoint. There's a need to improve and maintain product quality, which also reduces wastage, and there's a need to verify product safety. So generally, we need traceability and transparency, but across the full value chain. And this only can really happen when there's advanced collaboration and information exchange in an ecosystem. Which brings me to my last point. To really build resilience and sustainability, organizations can't do it on their own. It has to be a team sport. And this is an important thing about what we're talking about today around shared ledger, right? There has to be an underlying cross-cutting foundational infrastructure that underpins this resilience, agility, and sustainability. And so that's driving a business model innovation by being more collaborative and establishing new partnerships. And these undoubtedly will uncover new opportunities and grow market share. So graphically, if you look at what the current approach is, and it's quite antiquated. If you understand fundamentally that no business is actually an island, and this has always ever been the case. This is not new news, right? Every business is part of an ecosystem of business or trading partners, right? So if you take a bird's eye view of what happens in the supply chain ecosystem and keep the perspective that this is from every business that's operating with its trading partners, it's got trading partners on either side of its business, and there's multiple tiers of suppliers, customers, third-party logistics companies, financial institutions, and so on. So the kinds of activities that happens in this information exchange model is trading relationships are established and maintained. Physical objects are created, transformed, and transported. Assets are deployed and maintained. Business transactions are conducted. Imported documents are exchanged, and money changes hands, right? So supply chain is not just about the movement of goods, right? There's a lot that goes into it. It's quite complex, right? So what's the challenge? The challenge is that if you look at this particular example, we're looking at participants in a food supply chain. Traditional systems were designed for a world where trade was focused on multiple bi-directional interactions between organizations. So information was exchanged between pairs of trading partners. Case in point, the EDI world was about exchanging business transaction information between a buyer and a supplier, or a sender and a receiver, like a purchase order, a shipping notice, and an invoice. So in this model, there's a lack of connectedness and visibility, and it's the result of fragmented data across the supply chain, where data is siloed within each organization. There's no end-to-end traceability and poor information sharing. This is a multi-party visibility issue, which creates significant inefficiency across the ecosystem. It's one of the biggest reasons why there's so much wastage in the supply chain. And most often, you might find goods sitting in a port for 2 weeks waiting for the documentation to follow, paper-based documentation at that. So this has far-reaching impacts in some industries, such as inventory issues, overproduction, poor forecasting, stock-out issues, or surplus stock in the wrong places, for example. So all these issues collectively adds to business frictions and disputes. Dispute resolution between parties is a slow and tedious process. It takes a lot of human resources, often impacting business performance, resulting in wastage, high costs, inability to reduce disruption response time, and ultimately customer experience. So given this multi-party styled pairwise interchanges and interaction, the business friction is multiplied and amplified between a business and its trading ecosystem. With a modern contemporary approach, it is one where members of a trading ecosystem are leveraging a trusted, transparent, and shared business process built off a shared or common ledger or a single source of truth. So Hyperledger is the foundation of that shared ledger. This is one where participants can co-create records and transactions and share it multiple times rather than sharing it bidirectionally, of course, with the right rules of visibility and security in place. Friction is reduced due to removing the need to share information in pairwise exchange. Disputes are reduced as information is co-created, and everyone has access, if they are permissioned or entitled to have an access, to end-to-end visibility of supply chain events, where the product has come from, what's happened to it, where is it at the moment, etc. So IBM Food Trust is a business solution that adopts this contemporary approach. How it works is all participants in the ecosystem conduct their various activities around physical events and business transactions, and they record these in a secure manner in the Hyperledger-based solution. As owners of the data, they have full control over who sees what information. This all happens by an easy set of easy-to-use options like direct capture, uploads, IoT devices, integration with systems via APIs, and so on. Most importantly, all of these events are captured using international standards, such as GS1, so that interoperability is built in. And the important thing here is that every participant captures this information as they derive value for it. So there's motivation for people to actually capture this information. As you can see in this picture, logistics is a critical segment or segments in the end-to-end process. And logistics providers derive direct value from this traceability and can also use it to provide value to their customers as well. So Food Trust provides secure access to end-to-end food supply chain via specialized modules. And these are for easy onboarding, for tracking and tracing, for providing instant access to digitized documents, for providing advanced insights like shelf life, risk, etc. And it's got extensive APIs. Food Trust is more than a technical solution. Sorry, I've skipped a slide there. It's more than a technical solution. It is a network. It's been a network since 2016. I just removed customer logos from this particular slide, but it's been growing exponentially, and most importantly, it's a network. It's a network where everybody derives value from it. So looking at the value to participants, as I said, every participant derives value from it. And there's roughly about 8 different reasons for an organization to use a solution like this. Earlier this year, I published a LinkedIn article, and the title is Traceability, Is It Real? Please do go and read that article. It explains these benefits and these value statements quite succinctly. The important thing here is many, and you'll see in the case studies as I walk you through the case studies, out of the 8 reasons, there's nearly always 1 or 2 priority reasons why an organization joins IBM Transparent Supply or Food Trust. And most often, it might be a completely different reason to their trading partner, right? For example, a fresh produce supplier might join for a different reason for the retailer, because the retailer might joined because they want to ensure freshness of produce to their consumers. Whereas for the grower or the supplier, the issue for them is that if the product perishes whilst it's even on the retailer's premises, sometimes there isn't enough proof to show that the product was in good condition when it arrived at the retailer's premises. So the cost is actually pushed to the supplier. So the supplier's reason is to save costs and not underwrite the wastage issues or the friction-based issues in the supply chain. So let's look at the overall results that we've gained from most of our projects. So I regard Transparent Supplier Food Trust as one project because it's one product, but IBM's conducted over 1,000 blockchain engagements, right? So some of the key results is 97% reduction in document flow, 96% perfect order conformance, and 99% improvement on traceability speed. And I'll talk you through one of the case studies where prior to the pilot we did with them in 2016, it took them 7 days to trace a particular product end to end, whereas once they had all the data in Food Trust, it took 2.2 seconds. So onto the, before I get to the case studies, here's another QR code. You might want to scan that on your phone and you'll get a consumer's view of an item, whole wheat grain pizza, and you'll be able to see the ingredients used in that pizza. You can even click on the ingredients and see where those ingredients came from. You'll see some details around the facilities, and you'll see some details around the certifications that those either facilities or products have gained over time. I'll just pause for a minute to give you an opportunity to scan that QR code. You might want to save that to later because I've got another QR code at the end of this session.
And we just got a question. Will you share the slides afterwards? Will you be able to share the slides?
I'm happy to share it to the community, yes.
Great, thanks.
So let's take a look at the case studies. So, whilst, as I said earlier, all the conversation points are applicable to every participant. Generally, there's, one or two priority reasons why they use the solution, and I'll try and emphasize that in each of the case studies. So the first case study is Walmart. And they started, the pilot was with mangoes, and one of their biggest challenges was leafy greens, which can be the source of foodborne illnesses like listeriosis. And so Walmart wanted to take proactive action to ensure that they have optimal response in the case of an outbreak, because you see the challenge is not just tracing down to where the product came from. You have to do that as well as tracing, well, where else did the product go to, so that you can conduct an efficient recall. So we did the pilot with them in 2016, and they've been, as I said, they've been able to cut their trace time from weeks to seconds. And within a short time, within a year, they launched an initiative to have all their suppliers of fresh leafy greens onto this solution. This enabled them to precede the FDA's recommendation for adoption of real-time tracing technology after the 2018 romaine lettuce E. coli outbreak. So for Walmart, their use case was around provenance, quality, and safety. And some of their participants are producers, distributors, retailers, and consumers. So essentially, they wanted to create a secure supply chain monitoring for product quality and safety monitoring. The next case study is a local Australian one. It's with Antonello Produce. They're a fresh produce distributor. They connect to a number of farms. And so their challenge is often an incorrect product variety labeling, and all relevant product data are most paper-based and very difficult for them to attain this via the growers, suppliers, and agents, and it's not often timely. So the challenge was to align their supply chain for immediate response for this information. So they conducted a pilot for watermelons, and now they're launching an initiative to onboard their other products. They were able to cut their trace time down from weeks to seconds as well. And they anticipate that this will deliver incremental growth with their retail customers. So their participants are mainly growers, other distributors and retailers. They wanted end-to-end traceability from farm to distribution center to consumer. Their use cases is to reduce friction, provenance, and also incremental growth. The next case study is Carrefour. Carrefour found themselves in a situation where consumers were demanding more information on food than ever before, and they lacked easy access to this information and more importantly, ways to share this with their consumers. They partnered with us to trace select products to leverage QR codes on those products and trace them. For example, consumers can scan select brands of chicken to learn information about origin, feed, antibiotic use, etc. They announced that they increased revenues because of this transparency and improved their brand trust and stronger relationships with consumers, which created a halo effect for other consumers. So it was more about creating a trusted supply chain to verify product quality. And for them, it was also provenance and brand trust. The next case study is raw seafoods. And so essentially, and this is in the Nordic regions, the small seafood producers wanted to differentiate themselves in the market by investing in best practices. There's a lot of consumer confusion with regards to seafood consumption. There's a lot of labeling challenges in the seafood market, not just in Norway. This is a challenge around the world. So raw seafoods wanted to use Food Trust to share information about the scallops' origin, the date of harvest, the quality, and the quality with their supply chain partners. And so the results for them was they received a premium for quality, and the restaurant front of the house is now empowered to drive sales and engage consumers. So for them, basically, it was to generate higher margins on trusted products by enabling consumer verification. Their use cases was provenance, freshness, authenticity. The next use case is Coffee Connect, and I'll explain why this is slightly different to most of the other use cases. So, coffee commodity prices have been dropping, making coffee production cost prohibitive, right? And farmers have started to switch to more lucrative crops. And generally, as we know, only a minuscule proportion of coffee profits go to farmers, an average of several cents per cup of coffee. So Farmer Connect is using the transparent supply solution and they built a private blockchain platform. So we're able to allow a customer or a business partner to create a private platform outside of Food Trust using the same application. So in this case, consumers gain visibility of the end-to-end coffee supply chain. And the early adopters include JM, Smuckers, and so on. But why this model is slightly different is that the client was able to create an application that front-ended Food Trust and enabled the solution to be monetized, because when a consumer purchases a cup of coffee and they like that cup of coffee, they can find out who the farmer is and they can actually tip the farmer, right? So this is an amazing model, right? Because now it actually connects the consumer with the actual farmer, right? Which is very unusual in the supply chain world. So for them, the use cases was provenance, consumer engagement, inventory optimization, and the coffee network involves farmers, co-ops, traders, roasters, retailers, consumers, and certification organizations. So you can see it's a multi-party network. The last case study I'd share with you is the Vinishaw Wine Network. And I've chosen this case study because it demonstrates the relevance of food trust use cases across other industries, such as wine manufacturing, mining, pharmaceuticals, and I'll share some links for you to actually go and look at other case studies out of this, outside of the ones that I've just shared. So, with the wine network, we all know that global wine supply chain is pretty complex, pretty unpredictable. Supply chain members often know the identity of only the player directly upstream and downstream. Communication across the supply chain is very inconsistent at best, and consumer feedback very seldom makes its way to the winemaker. And it's very easy for wine to get cooked. Now, this doesn't apply to your $5 wines that you find in the supermarket, right? This applies to when a wine connoisseur spends a significant amount of money on wine. They want greater peace of mind that they can understand what's happened to this wine as it was being transported across the supply chain. Where were the grapes grown? What was the soil conditions? And what was the environment at the time it was growing, and so on, right? So this increased value of the data and the insights for all members. And so the participants in this network includes vineyards, distributors, retailers, tech providers, consumers. And it's about creating a secure supply chain that monitors environmental conditions for high quality. Notwithstanding, what I haven't mentioned is that we know in the wine industry, there's a lot of fraudulent transactions, right? So this is about ensuring the authenticity of the wine as well, in addition to provenance, traceability, and transparency. Vinishaw, there's a trademark on there as well, because that is provisioned by an IBM business partner called eProvenance. And so they've built a whole lot of other application capabilities around what Food Trust provides, or Transparent Supply provides, as a foundational traceability platform for capturing events, business transactions, as well as documents in the supply chain. So those were the case studies. I put up a QR code for you here. This QR code takes you to the IBM website for Transparent Supply. Here you will find a significant amount of videos. Notwithstanding, you can just search for Food Trust and Transparent Supply videos on YouTube, and you'll find a whole lot. You'll be able to see use cases, and you'll be able to see value by industry, and there's other resources as well. Notwithstanding, if you link back to me on LinkedIn, and you can ask me questions directly, here's my QR code again. And also, we can connect, and you can email me as well. Over to you, Julian. I'm happy to take questions. I'll just turn off my video again, and I'll stop sharing.
Okay. All right. Anybody got any questions? So actually, we do have a couple of questions. I think, Pierce, do you want to ask the question, or do you want me? Why don't you ask the question?
Sure, I'm happy to ask it. So I am very interested in the idea of traceability across the supply chain. And in particular, I'm curious to understand more with Hyperledger and applications, if that's been applied to government specifically. And I'm thinking about customs, and sometimes the data with customs not being transmitted very efficiently to different shipping lines or to terminals. And so I was curious if you've seen any case studies relating to government adaptation.
Yes, so there's another IBM solution called TradeLens. And so TradeLens is also built on Hyperledger. TradeLens has extensive coverage of all trade documents that are exchanged by trade participants. So this includes buyers, suppliers, bulk cargo operators, carriers, whether the carriers are land-based, whether the carriers are sea-based or air-based or whatever. Primarily, all the carriers join TradeLens, but customers can also join TradeLens. There's two modules in TradeLens. One is TradeLens Core, which covers all these trade documents. The other one is TradeLens EBL, e-bill of lading. And e-bill of lading is, that's a significant issue because typically with e-bill of lading, there's a buyer and supplier involved, and there's two banks involved. And generally, what happens is it's a massive, concurrent digital exchange problem, because typically, when the goods leave via the carrier needs to see that it needs to see evidence that the goods have been paid for. So generally, the bill of lading acts as a ticket for conveying, proof that the owner or the holder of the ticket actually has paid for the goods. So what actually happens is multiple parties are involved in the transaction to ensure payment has been confirmed and the transfer of that electronic bill of lading ticket, so that when the carrier actually spots that ticket, they can actually release the goods to the buyer. They know that both banks have received the evidence of their transaction and money has changed hands conclusively. So TradeLens is used in that, for solving that problem. And there are many ports around the world are also using it. And so customs organizations can actually use access TradeLens. So the fundamental difference or the change in the business model here is, compliance burden on businesses to lodge information to a customs authority is overly high, right? So the value of this is the regulator, if they're permissioned for accessing the data, they go and pick the data up, right? And this conforms to a basic philosophy or principle that compliance should be embedded in everyday economic activity, right? So the primary thing here is business trade should be facilitated. And so what happens is with TradeLens, it means that business can continue concluding their trade using TradeLens, and the regulator can pick up the data, which means that compliance is embedded in everyday economic activity. Make sense?
Yes, thank you, Levine.
And there are other ones like GSPN, the global shipping, which is based in Hong Kong as well. There's a few other, but TradeLens are famous.
Yeah. In fact, if you hook up with me out of this call, I'm happy to share information and give you URLs around where you can see what the TradeLens network is like, which carriers are onboarded, which ports are onboarded, and so on. It's all transparent, right? So
I'd be very
it's quite
curious.
extensive. Yeah, it's
I
quite
was seeing
extensive.
sometimes with some carriers data transmitting and some not, and I'm curious if that has anything to do with some being registered and some not being registered.
Yeah, I mean, Hyperledger gives you the opportunity to actually enforce strong rules of visibility, and everybody's data is on there, but not everybody gets to see everybody else's data, right? Which is the value of it, right?
Okay, I see.
Can I ask a question on audio?
Yes, who's that? I can't see you.
Yeah, thanks. So this was a very nice presentation. Thanks for the use cases also. In one of the use case where shipper can tip the coffee maker, the coffee farmer, what is the chance that the wrong data of the coffee maker has been fed into the system? And a follow-up question is, as this is blockchain based, and blockchain security and reliability comes only if they are widely distributed. So if it is, how it is widely distributed. So suppose I want to join, then can I join alone, or do I have to have be part of a big system? Yeah.
Okay, there's two questions there, right? So, wrong data being uploaded. Look, there's many ways to validate the data. You can close the loop with the data by equipping people with field service applications on the mobile phone. And you can use that to scan, and that would scan the geolocation, it would scan the date and the time. You can add a picture to it, and then that can, you can upload that data via the application, right? So you can close the loop on that. And then there's also technology that can actually examine the product using artificial intelligence as well, right? So those things are possible in addition to efficient and effective labeling of the goods. So it's a case of, what's the overall architecture and how do we actually look at the complete end-to-end threat model in the supply chain and how do we actually plug those threats, right? The whole idea here is not to build a utopian solution. The idea is to look at what is the threat model and how do we actually minimize the threat in the system. Your second question around joining alone, if you put your data up onto Transparent Supply or Food Trust, you must have consumers of the data, right? You must have a trading partner upstream or a trading partner downstream who will gain value out of it, right? You don't, as a single organization, if there's nobody going to be consuming your data, then there's no point in you using a solution like this, right? So it is of value for the entire network. And generally, it's important for an organization when they're joining to actually speak with their trading partners and say, look, my data is up there. It's of value for us to all join such a solution because we all get value out of it, right? If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, got it. So that means I have to talk with my partners, and then do I have to make a private blockchain among us?
No. In fact, with Transparent Supply or Food Trust, you don't actually need any blockchain knowledge, right? There's very easy ways for data to be uploaded. There's a user interface. And because not everybody's sitting in front of a computer whilst they're operating the supply chain, there's also the opportunity of batch uploading templated documents or spreadsheets. Then there's also an opportunity after you've done pilots and proven your process and worked out your processes and the right read points where you're capturing the data, there's always the ability to integrate. If you have systems, there's always the ability to integrate them via APIs. So all the functionality in the product is exposed via REST APIs. Naturally, you need secure keys and credentials to actually use those APIs as well.
Okay, so what I'm accessing is a blockchain node. Then who is owning the nodes? Where are they?
So Food Trust is hosted by IBM. We also have a governance council that has members of third-party organizations such as retailers and other Food Trust members and participants. And certainly we can host nodes for customers. And why it's important to have the ability to host a node on behalf of another party is, say, if two enterprises have a node of Transparent Supply or Food Trust, then they can participate in unique business process between them via a private channel. So whilst they can share data with their broader supply chain, if there's any unique business process between two organizations, then they can encode that process in chain code, leveraging a private channel, if that makes sense.
Okay. So no, my whole point is the majority of the nodes are owned by IBM. Then how it is? Then it would be better you have a normal database than the blockchain. So,
well, not necessarily.
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, not necessarily. They're all built on Red Hat OpenShift containers, and so we will announce whether that would be made available on other cloud environments as well. So, as you know, IBM has a strategy for hybrid cloud. And a lot of our software are built on Red Hat OpenShift containers, which means it can run on any Red Hat OpenShift containers can run on any hyperscaler environment, or even on premise. If a customer wants to implement Red Hat OpenShift within their own Linux environment, then they can run IBM containers. But Food Trust is not yet available on third-party cloud providers yet.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Julian, can I ask a query?
Sorry, Julian, I think you're muted.
Oh, okay.
I want to say, Sath if you put your hand up, please put your hand up if you want to ask a question, or you can just ask a question. Sath, please go ahead.
Yeah. A wonderful session as such, to know about IBM Food Trust, Julian, and so my query is this one. Actually, see, we have different amount of parties and vendors being surrounded, and how we are executing it with suppose if there is a failure in any of the middleman party, what type of is it all being configured only on the smart contracts, or the thing is if there is any failure in the middle, where buyer need not want to aware, or the seller need not want to it be the failure could be in any of the middleware layer, and how it has been totally been when you say everything getting transparently, it has been getting recorded. Can the buyer or seller can able to view that this is the failure it has been occurred, and in case of who carries the entire ownership, or sometimes what happens is there could be a delay in shipping, or there could be a delay in there could be a delay in getting the products done, or there could be some certificate are getting missed or something. So how the entire things being taken care, and if there is any failure scenarios, how this particular Food Trust handles it as a whole.
That, to be honest, is a subject for a whole lengthier discussion, right? I don't think we have time to actually go through that here. But I can say that none of these issues have actually occurred to date. So, I'll just summarize quickly. It's all about how we ensure that the onboarding process looks at the end-to-end journey that each product takes. Right? Every product has the unique journey. And it's a case of engaging the participants in that unique journey to actually capture all the right data pertaining to that product, right? If that makes sense. Next question, Julian.
Okay, Sath, any follow-up? You okay with that? Oh, we've got Ramesh. Sorry, yeah. So, Sath, please.
Yeah, no, nothing, Julian, because I'm just trying to see that where if there is any type of live transactions, or any type of audit logs where it gets stored, or to capture it. So that's what I was just trying to check it out. No worries, we'll explore.
Look, all those issues are addressed. I don't think I'm at liberty to discuss the actual architecture of a commercial product on this call, right? If that makes sense.
But in the open source community, we have lots of these kind of discussions, right? So we have a supply chain, trade finance community, which we discussed everything from the most open source public blockchain to the most private. We have a whole spectrum. So please go.
So just FYI, even my earlier answers that I provided, those are all available on extensive help on the IBM website on the actual product. There's extensive product documentation, and you can in that last QR code that I showed, you can go via that web page, via that URL to the actual product documentation, and you'll see a description around some of those technical details, if that makes sense.
Sure, no worries. We'll go through. And Julian, I just know if there is a trade finance community, if you can able to forward the details, then it would be great, Julian.
I'll try and put a link, but just reach out to me. wiki.hyperledger.org. Down there has all the different. So within Hyperledger we have working groups, and IBM is one of our members. We have many members where we're an open source computer. We're a neutral party, right? And we build code. Right? Within that, we have about 15 different code bases, right? So I see people saying, we have public, we have a Bezier Ethereum stack as well. So we have a lot of great tech, right? In terms of special interest groups, we do pull the community together, and we do have a special interest groups, and you look at it there, or just reach out to me and I'll give you the URL. They're on their summer holiday, the guys on the supply chain, but they should come back in September. You can go to our YouTube and you can see the whole history. You can go onto our wiki, join it. It's all open to everybody. And we have multiple different industries, verticals, that you're very welcome to do that. Because there are many ways of doing this, right? Horses, some of the stuff that IBM work at Pacific about large organizations, some people want more public network, and it's I noticed just covering some of those kind of questions we have there, right? So I'm going to go now to some of the and please do, everyone is welcome to this community. I got Ramesh first, and then Nadeem.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Julian. So in the currently, whatever that we have centralized supply solutions, so how much portion that can be ported to the decentralized supply chain? Because that's where currently the solutions which are already working and doing good, but moving it to the decentralized, do we need to complete the whole solution, or some part of the solution has to be moved to the decentralized solution? That's where the cost and everything will comes to the picture. That's what I just wanted to know from your experience of the supply chain.
No, you can certainly integrate the solution with existing systems. For example, many organizations have the traditional EDI that captures business transactions, and many of them suffer from a long tail problem in that not many of their trading partners actually submit those business transactions via those EDI solutions because they're proprietary or they use standards in a proprietary manner. So certainly transparent supply can complement existing investments. It can complement centralized solutions. And so, I would say that over time, you'll find more and more solutions that need multi-party collaboration will have some distributed ledger component, right? And I prefer to use the word distributed ledger because blockchain is not the only technology for a shared ledger, right? If that makes sense.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nadeem.
Thank you, Levine, for the session. How the solution deals with the forgeries like a counterfeit?
I think we've lost you. I think he went. He was going to ask about counterfeit goods. I think he was going to. Do you want to try again, Nadeem? We lost you for a second. I think it was a Zoom glitch.
Yes, I guess. I'm asking about the counterfeit. Yes.
And what's the question?
Right, so,
okay, go ahead, Levine. Sorry.
So there's various ways to address counterfeiting, right? So fundamentally, the difference between the crypto world and the permissioned blockchain world is in the crypto world. Historically, and it's becoming less the case now, but historically, the crypto world has thrived in anonymity, right? You can't. It's hard to find out who was behind that particular transaction, right? Whereas in the blockchain for business world, it's more about enabling collaboration between trusted partners or trusted partners of trusted partners, right? So it's a chain of trusted. It's a chain of a trusted network, right? So it's a different business model, right? So that's the first level. The second level is you can close the loop around physical product authenticity and fraud by ensuring you've got the right product identifiers, the right labeling, labeling that would get destroyed if you try to remove it and fix it on some other counterfeiting product. And then lastly, you can close the feedback loop by making sure you synchronize your traceability platform with your auto management platform with the end consumer. And the end consumer is the last safety net, right? Because when they purchase the product, they can actually verify that they've actually purchased the authentic product, if that makes sense, right? Unless consumers are looking to buy a fake product, right? So.
Thank you, Leonie. Thank you.
Next question, Joe.
I think there's a bunch of questions about whether we should be using public blockchains. So there's one here saying why not can't we deploy on public blockchain using zero knowledge proofs of data privacy? We do actually have a whole bunch of stuff in zero proofs within another Hyperledger project, right? Very happy to hear that as Alicia. And I think really the broader question to that is, permission versus permissionless and the kind of range of difference. So why permission rather than public, or kind of a mix? What's your thoughts on that in this space?
I think they all have the place, Julian. I don't really want to get into a religious discussion, but they all have the place. They all have a fit for purpose. Yeah. I think the decision is based on taking a proper architecture decision, right? What is the problem? What are you trying to solve? Why is it a problem? What are the options for solving the problem? What's the rationale for using this particular approach, right? So I think that's the approach we need to take. Why did we use a permission blockchain for this kind of solution? It works, right? There's literally hundreds and hundreds of customers using it. I can't give you the exact number. Tens of thousands of locations that goods are passing through, millions of transactions. It works, right? And so, why move from a model that works into something that might be theoretically a better solution kind of thing, right?
Okay. I think that was from Alicia. There's Alicia, and Mog has a few questions. Anybody else want to add anything else to the conversation? I think we're nearly at the top of the hour, and Levine, your boats are still there. So,
still floating.
So, any other questions from anybody? Please do raise your hand.
Well, there is one question I'm seeing, Julian, which I'd love to answer. Blockchain is too costly, not scalable, and higher cost of ownership. Not worth it, right?
No, go ahead.
I'd like to tackle that question, right? I think I think the issue is one of perception, right? I think if blockchain was too costly, we wouldn't have so many customers in this, right? So I would encourage everybody. IBM, although we've donated, there's no difference between IBM Hyperledger Fabric and Hyperledger Fabric from the foundation. We've donated all our code to the foundation, right? So IBM deploys Hyperledger Fabric on IBM Cloud. Join up, go to an IBM Cloud, create an IBM Cloud account, look at the cost of running Hyperledger Fabric on IBM Cloud. There's a slight difference between running Hyperledger Fabric on IBM Cloud and not, is because we also do hardware acceleration of the cryptographic algorithms. So you get better performance that way. But go and have a look. Have a look for yourself and see what the cost is, right? I think people tend to confuse, and I've had that recent discussion with somebody this week. They talked about blockchain being resource intensive and costly and so on, right? It's not true. If you're looking at public blockchains, yes, the consensus algorithm is proof of work, yes, that is resource intensive, right? But with the permission blockchain, it's not, right? So I think we should just be cautious around making broad brush statements like that, and just be better informed. So I encourage anybody, just go to the IBM website, IBM Cloud website, and play around with it, right? I think you can get a free cloud account for a certain number of hours or something like that and play with it, right? So go for it.
Okay, great answer. So we can take maybe one. Kashi, I noticed you'll come up with a question. We should probably, we're running over the hour, but I'm happy to take a few more questions.
Thanks, Julian and Levine. Yeah, just in response and to add to that, Levine, is that although it's a private and permissioned network, when referring to the public or permissionless blockchain, proof of stake, which is not far, it's around the corner. This is highly efficient energy efficient form of energy. So I think we blockchain at large is working out to be quite an efficient source of general purpose technology. So I would add to that actually.
No, I think you're
Sounds
right.
good.
Very exciting stuff happening soon in the Ethereum community, right? So yeah, and this is tech, so we're continually evolving. We're doing it open source, so it's not just one IT; it's the whole world working on this. It's IBM still very much in a development of Hyperledger Fabric, but there's many other companies involved in it, right? So lots of interesting innovations. I think we're only at the beginning of this this blockchain journey. So I'd like to thank Levine for sharing today some of the real world activities that he is doing with IBM, and there's so many other things. So, and thank you everybody for turning up today and listening. And please, as I said, you can do Wiki, you can approach me. We're doing an Australian chapter, which we're doing it during this time zone, right? So it's an Asia Pacific friendly time zone as well. So Levine is the co-lead for that, and so is Ali. So reach out to them, reach out to me as well if you want. I'm happy to connect. And this is a community, so it's not just about us doing. We want a community for you. It's about we, right? So anybody can get involved, do presentations, learn more and more about the things that we're doing within this community and beyond. So Levine, do you want to say any final words as well? And then I think we'll wrap up.
No, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending, Julian, and all good questions. Thank you for asking, everyone. It just helps contribute towards us all learning and understanding the technology better.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Take care, keep safe, and hopefully speak soon, connect at some other activity. All right. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.